All right, for this week's intro, I'm going to talk a little about how to build a box plot. So just like I have been doing later in the week, I'll post another video of how to do some of the homework problems. But instead of me kind of explaining the theory like I usually do in the intro weeks, there's not a lot of theory to this week because we're continuing to do what we've been doing. So week 3, learn how to do confidence intervals. And week 3's intro, explain confidence intervals. Week 4, you learn how to do hypothesis testing. And week 4's intro, explain what hypothesis testing is. So this week, the only difference in week 5 is instead of comparing one population, you're comparing two populations to each other, and you want to know if they're statistically different, right? So I posted a PDF with a lot of formulas for you all that like to do things by hand. They are very ugly looking formulas, but they are easily doable in Excel. However, if you've switched over to using the technology in the TI-84, Excel, or StatCrunch, you don't really have to worry about the formulas. It's more of an interpreting. And like I said, midweek announcement, we'll have a video posted on how to do two of the homework problems. Again, don't pay attention to the numbers because sometimes the problems shift, but the concepts are still basically the same. But I wanted to show something kind of about box plots. So to build a box plot, you click on the blue box, let the data load, and then click on the little blue box. And so here you can see we are comparing tax rates to females to males, right? So we're comparing the population of female gender and the population of male gender. So we're comparing two populations, right? So if we want to do a box plot, I wouldn't recommend Excel. Excel doesn't have, well, if you have the newest version of Excel, it does decently at doing box plots, but not as well. I would really prefer you to use StatCrunch because it gives you a nice quick visual. So we're going to open the data in StatCrunch. As soon as I turn off my pop-up blocker. Yeah, so I've noticed Internet Explorer and Safari have been kind of hit or miss. Google Chrome seems to work much better. So if you're having some kind of internet issues with the softwares, I would highly encourage you to download Google Chrome. It's free. Everything seems to work better using Google Chrome, so I'm getting in the habit of using it as well. All right, so just like we've been doing, stat, so we still have our same stat, so just a quick, you'll be in the video again later, but now t-stat, there's your two sample, there's your paired, which we talked about in the announcement, and proportions, two sample, right? So everything else is the same, it's just pick two sample this week instead of one sample. But if I want to kill the box plot, I click graph, and I come here to Boxplot, and I'm going to change something, hit cancel, because they named them the same. So I'm going to readjust the names. So if you click up here in StatCrunch, you can actually rename these. I'm going to call this tax rate F for female and tax rate M for male. Do it again now. Graph, box plot. Now, if I hold shift because I have a Mac on my computer, I get to both. I think it's control on the Windows. So fences to identify outliers. Draw boxes horizontally. Because if you don't, they draw them vertically. I like horizontally because one, and then looks like the homework. Let me get rid of this. Let me move it over now so I can click on it. So that way they're horizontally. You couldn't put in the mean marker, but typically box plots only have the median. Dividers, none, but you can put that stuff in. These are where you can do all the kind of cute labels and make it pretty if you want. I'm going to click compute. And there is my two box plots. So then all you got to do is look at the 4 choices and answer the question. But let's kind of talk about what a box plot is. So this first dash line here is your minimum, right? So you put your thing over, it already gives you the values. So that is your minimum, or quadrant 1. I mean, that's your min, sorry. Here's quadrant 1, which is the 25th percentile. The red line is your median, which is the 50th percentile. Then the top is quadrant 3, or your 75th percentile, and then this last line is kind of outside your quadrant. Now, what you have here, this dot, that is an outlier, right? And if you put your cursor over it, it tells you exactly what variable it is. Row 14, x34. So you can actually see which data point is the outlier. But here are my two box plots. And what box plots do is they show you the distribution of your data, right? And we want to be normal, which we have a low, we have a high, and our median's kind of in the center. And it's kind of the same on both sides. So this one, if we actually built a histogram, would look bell-shaped. This one would be a little skewed because our mean is over here, so it has a longer tail. So this would be a little left skewed, but still not too bad. So fairly normal. So it meets enough of the requirements where we can do two sample hypothesis testing. But that's how you read your box plot. Min, 25th percentile, median, 75th percentile, the end of your quadrant, and then if you have an outlier. All right, and then you just come and you find one that looks similar. As you can see, I already checked it to show what it does. Then you kind of look at the differences and see if you have any, right? So you can see that there is definitely a little bit of a difference here. In the announcement, I tell you where to go to look at all the requirements, so you can make sure, go review those sections, so you make sure you can pick all the right requirements. And then you come down here with hypothesis testing. Just as like we've done before, the null is always equals, the alternative is less than, greater than, or not equal to. And this problem is a not equal to problem because they were asking if the tax rate for men is different than the tax rate for women. And then if you reopen your data, click on it, open in StatCrunch again, because I wasn't sure if I closed it or not, so it's going to take a minute to load, because I had it open still. This is a two sample t-test, because we're comparing means. So then I actually have data, so I just click with data. And again, I haven't named them, so you should go back and rename them if you do this problem so you can see. But here's where you set up your hypothesis test and your confidence. Everything's the same, except for instead of picking one sample like you've done before, you now pick two. And you can click compute. Same things, p-values, test statistics, degrees of freedom, your standard error, your sample difference, and then this is, I always like to look at this because it shows what your null and alternatives, so you can make sure it is what the problem says and they didn't actually make a mistake. All right, so not a lot to this first intro video because so we're doing the exact same concepts that we've been doing. It's just we now have two samples. Again, I highly encourage you to use technology. But here's a video kind of how to do Boxplot and do some of the stuff. There will be a second video later this week and the announcement around Thursday on how to do some of the homework problems and using StatCrunch. All right, have a good week. We're halfway through the semester.